3 Nephi 11:29, he that hath the spirit of contention is not of me, but is of the devil. The most misused verse in Scripture, or one of them at least. Hey guys, Saint Explainer here. On this channel, I explain things about my religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and today I want to talk about that verse I just highlighted from the Book of Mormon, and the difference between conflict and contention. Because people tend to read this verse as if those two things were the same, that engaging in conflict or the presence of conflict in your life is an indicator that you are of the devil. Usually in support of this sort of cult of nice, go along to get along, doormat stuff that we equate with being a good Christian. I'm not here to say that we should seek it out, because President Nelson is right with what he says here. All I'm saying is that conflict is not the same thing as contention, and the absence of conflict by itself isn't a good indicator of how good of a disciple of Jesus Christ you are. For the simple reason that if you make avoiding conflict into a gospel principle, you don't get to have any other gospel principles. This is because Jesus and Satan are in conflict. Satan and his followers will challenge any principle of truth you believe in, and if your goal is to avoid conflict, your only option is to back down. As long as Satan has power in the world, and to whatever extent you're unwilling to go along with his plans, conflict is inevitable, which is why we see so many good men in the scriptures engaged in it all the time. And I don't just mean conflict between the armies of righteous and wicked nations, but also personal scale conflicts like the kind of things you might encounter in your ordinary lives. For example, here's Jesus and his disciples picking a fight, deliberately doing something that would offend and provoke the Pharisees. And here's Jesus insulting people and telling them they're going to hell in the same sentence. Jesus did say, "That which you've seen me do, even that shall you do." He did not say, "That which you have seen the nicest guy you can imagine do, go do that." Some people want you to think that the only way to be Christ-like is to be a doormat. And the reason they want you to think this is so that they can step on you. If you live in Utah, this has been the story of basically your entire lifetime, with exactly the results you would expect. But you might come up to me and tell me that despite everything I've said, contention is still bad, and I would agree. And then you could ask me, well, if contention isn't just the same thing as conflict, how do I know what contention is? Which is a very good question, because despite the fact that conflict is inevitable, contention is a choice. We need to understand what it is so that we can make better decisions. And for this, I want to point to the example of Captain Moroni. Now, Captain Moroni was a man who engaged in a lot of conflict in his life, and he was very good at it. But before we accuse him of being a contentious sinner, he's also the subject of some of the highest praise ever given in Scripture to anyone. And the difference, I think, are his motives. Captain Moroni never fought because of pride or greed or worldly pleasure. Rather, his motives were the protection of his family, his people, their religion, and their way of life. So those all seem like perfectly good motives to me. And things that are under attack in today's world like they were in his. The examination of Captain Moroni's motives gets us the answer to the question I asked earlier. What is contention versus what is just conflict? Well, look at Moroni's motives. They were righteous. Therefore, contention is unrighteous conflict. One thing about this definition is that you can't just look at someone else engaged in conflict and know that they're being contentious, because you aren't them and you don't know what's going on. Which is fine by me, because this stuff was usually just a way of dismissing what somebody is saying by arguing against how they're saying it. It's a cheap way of taking the moral high ground while not actually having to engage with what's being said. Actually, it takes more than a quick, unrighteous judgment to know whether someone else, or you, is being contentious. And it turns out that you actually need to have a good working knowledge of right and wrong, and good and evil, so you can know what to do when the inevitable conflict happens, and resist contention while fighting for the right, like Captain Moroni did. Anyway, that's all I've got for this week. I wish you guys a good and godly week, and I'll see you next time.